everybody. Welcome to SuperSoul Boulder. It's been a long day. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It's been a little bit of a long day, but a great day. So welcome to SuperSoul Boulder, episode 79. I'm Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy, and I'm really excited about tonight's topic about steps mainly, and different kind of steps, right? Dave, hey, glad you could make it. All right, I'm gonna lose a layer here. But, yes, welcome to SuperSoul Boulder, to another Monday night where we talk about everything mind, body, heart, health, and wellness. Not just the mind, not just the body, some things I've been very interested in my career, but also the heart and what is it you're excited about, what is it you're passionate about, what interests you, and how do those all fit together. And tonight's topic is about taking those small, imperceptible, oftentimes imperceptible steps into that lead into, hey Carlos, that lead into oftentimes the greatest changes of our life. So last week we talked about change, and so kind of taking that a step further, see what I did there? We're going to talk about those steps that we take to get there, because it got me thinking about it. Well, and you know what, the last patient I just saw, we were talking about this too, how whether it's the healing process, getting his knee feeling better, or practicing yoga for a long time, or running training, or changing our nutritional habits, you know, anything we're working toward bettering ourselves or learning something, whatever that is, it's in that, hey Weston, it's in that those steps, those day-to-day decisions and practices, right? Maybe it's meditation, maybe you're new to meditation, or you remember when you were new to meditation, and or working out, or whatever that is, or getting back to something. It's in those, you know, day-to-day steps, those decisions we make, those decisions we have to make over and over and over again, or the routines we get in, or the habits we get in, or the habits we need to get out of and get into a new one that lead to the changes. And imperceptible because it's in the doing of those, right? It's in the daily run, it's in the daily yoga practice, it's in the daily choosing what you eat, it's in the you know, whatever it else is, daily meditation. It's in the practice of that. Hi Jerry. It's in the practice of each of those things, or whatever it is that you're doing each day. It's in that each day thing that the changes are happening. And imperceptibly so sometimes. And we might kind of know, you know, we're working towards that, but it's not as obvious, right? And it's harder to know that, Jerry, it's harder to see those changes than what I call the sexy exercise, or this, you know, big sexy changes that, you know, that can seem really exciting, or that we see someone else make it, or it looks like. But most of the time there's that process of those little steps along the way actually to get there, right? And it's so hard to be with those really small, I think that was Danny, but I wasn't sure yet. Thank you. It's harder to see those really small, subtle changes, right? I see it all the time in the clinic, because the changes I'm helping people make are really, really subtle ones, because we're changing how a muscle functions, its pliability. We're changing the ability for the nerve signal to get to the muscle so the muscle can change. And when that muscle can change and not be stiff and rigid, for example, then the joints have more room to move, which means your posture can be different, which means your alignment can be different. And those are all really, really subtle changes, right? And not something that, especially when you're in it, then you can notice. You know, it might be more obvious changes that you might be used to are those with strength training, right? So you're breaking down muscle so that it can rebuild and repair, so it's a little more obvious. But those subtle changes allow your body, for instance, to take on a whole new ability to move more freely and more naturally, probably like you did when you were younger. This is part of why when we can't move as well, when we feel stiff and rigid or have pain, we feel so much older than we actually are at any age. I hear this from patients at any age, no matter what, whether they're in their teens or 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, everyone says, oh, I feel older, because we do. We feel like we can't move as well. We tend to feel older, no matter what the age is. It's kind of funny. Can't do what I used to be able to do. Hey, Dan. So it's those really subtle, I always tell patients, I love the subtle, gradual changes because those are the long lasting kind. Those are the kind that, you're taking on yourself. You're changing, your body's changing, your habits are changing, even your mindset is changing potentially around what you thought you needed to do to make this change, all those things. But it's so subtle. Sometimes it's not imperceptible. Oftentimes I'll have people who are like, like they could tell a big difference, but it's not always linear. So it's kind of a cyclical thing where we're getting some change to happen. We're also changing patterns. We're also having to do some things regularly that we're not used to doing. And that all can be really challenging, right? It's not as easy as just one big leap and we get there. But most things that we're working toward in life, especially the things that matter or the things that we will feel really fulfilled by, right? The things that are so satisfying are satisfying because it took a measure of work. It took a measure of staying with it. It took a measure of, every day doing the thing, every day going on the run or the bike ride or doing the recovery work so that you can heal the problem, or doing this really easy, gentle stretching like I have some people do so that you're not pulling on things and creating resistance. The things that feel like it seems like too easy to make change. Those easy, subtle things, they can lead to, right, add up over and over and over again to the biggest changes, the biggest leaps, but we can't even see it until we look back at where we were, 2 years ago or a year ago or 10 years ago or 2 months ago, whatever it is, and see, I even forgot. I couldn't even see how far I've come. Have you ever been in that scenario where you've, it didn't occur to you, so you looked back at where you had been and suddenly you're like, wow, this is a new territory. I found that sometimes with running, a lot of you guys know, it's easy for me to use running examples because that's been my main mode of life and exercise lifestyle. But like training, and then suddenly, you go to race and suddenly you do so much better than you expected. Sometimes it's not that way, and it's the other way around. But more recently for me, it's like, oh wow, okay, something's working. But it's the day-to-day that you're putting in that it's hard to even know what the outcome can be like. And actually, it's in my humble experience too, while we're on the topic of running training, that I know for me, I had this long-held underlying belief that things would need to be really hard. Like I'd have to work harder, go farther, put in more effort all the time in order to get the results I wanted. And so I think when things, I'm not pushing so hard and I'm more allowing, just that steady, consistent, you put the work in, but you're not overdoing it all the time. I think I used to overdo it somewhat. Led to a lot of injuries and frustration. So I can always understand that. That now, doing running training, for example, not in such that hard pushing mode, sometimes can still lead to great results, better than I expected, because I didn't have to strive so hard for it. So it's really not always about those hard effort, do one thing and get there pathways. In fact, that usually doesn't lead to the results we're looking for, right? I think our culture really supports and encourages this notion that we've got to go harder, stronger, faster than everybody else in order to get there. We've got to, if I'm working the hardest, I'm going to have the best outcome. But that's not always the case, because sometimes it breaks you down, and not in a good way. It's not necessarily the smartest, most elegant, or most sophisticated way to tackle any task. It's more sophisticated, right? To be able to stay with something, to make a change that you can stick with for a long period of time. As my runners out there know, running, especially long distance running, is rewarded by years of training, not just weeks or months. Especially the longer the effort, the faster you want to go. So the same is true in the clinic with healing and injury, and in all kinds of life situations where we would like to change or learn or grow. And I think it's really important to to acknowledge, I mean, we don't have to see where those subtle changes are happening on a daily basis, but I think it helps to just know that, know that in putting in that practice every day, even if it means not doing. I think that's an important topic to bring up from someone who, especially from someone who dealt with a lot of injuries, a lot of striving, and who works with a lot of people who are struggling with that, moving through that process as well every day. That sometimes the biggest challenge is not doing. Sometimes the most sophisticated way to move forward in life is not the same way that you're used to. And so taking a step, even sometimes the small imperceptible step, is the one where you shift from the pattern of, say, just following the program because I have to follow the program even if it's going to hurt me, to today my body needs something different. To not follow the program, to follow what my body needs instead. To not follow my, pattern of I reach for X food because that's what I do, to, I'm gonna do something different. Those changes can be really challenging too, right? Because we are not, it's easy to get into the routine and the habit. It's harder to come back away from those and do something different. But every time we make that decision, that's like one of those really small, hard steps. And if you read my post earlier today, part of that, it's in those small steps that can be the hardest, sometimes the scariest kind of steps to take. Because it's not just kind of jumping out there to just do it without thoughtfulness, without thinking about, not just thinking, but thoughtful or intention behind it. That's what I mean by thoughtfulness. But more so, oh my gosh, hi Carlos, hi Gemma. But more so taking those more challenging steps in a direction that might be harder to take, right? This week I had several patients who had a lot of fear come up. A lot of fear around, oh my gosh, this feels different. I'm not sure I'm doing the right things. And that can be scary because we're in new territory, right? But that's where even the step of kind of settling back into that, or having a conversation about it, or really slowing down enough to kind of feel into what's going on, both physically and the emotions that are coming up, like fear. So it's really good to acknowledge all of those things, because those are some of the things, the things our minds want to say and tell us about the situation, are what can get in the way of our taking the steps forward. So it's also important when we can and when we're able to practice seeing what's here, physically, mentally, emotionally, acknowledging that, feeling it, because that can get in the way of our steps forward. It can really hold us back. Those are the things that can keep us stuck. Yeah, Dan says sometimes moderation is a bit too much. Sometimes, it all depends on where someone is. I missed your previous comment. I'll check it out later. I thought that it was interesting. This topic with steps really made me think about a subject I had courses and textbooks about that big on, which is gait pattern. Which gait is just your, walking or running stride. But when we take just walking, I think it's really interesting because there's a subtlety in just the simple nature of walking, right? And it's been a little while since I've looked at it quite that in depth, but there's a lot that can happen in just a simple walking step, right? So one leg is in stance phase. Here, I'll just run through it kind of briefly in case it's interesting to you, but let's take the one leg is in stance phase, one leg toes off, it goes into flight phase. We have a knee bend, we have a hip flexion. There are muscles involved in this momentum and this torque that happens naturally. We have a heel strike with walking. Now I know my runners out there are going to say some things like, don't heel strike, we don't need heel strike. Well, the walking, we actually need a heel strike to walk. And for instance, when people have a knee injury and they're stuck in a flexion, like say they have total knee replacement or an ACL surgery and they're still have their knee bent, that's going to really make them limp and create some other hip tightnesses and tensions. So it's really important when we walk that we are able to get this full knee extension. We rock forward onto the foot. Now this foot's in stance phase. This other foot is toeing off, going into flight phase or non-stance phase, not flight phase, that's in running, but our swing phase is what it's called. And then we need that hip flexion, knee extension, coming down, and both feet are now in a grounded stance phase. But all these subtle things happen. There's a coordination from side to side with our gluteus medius muscles, with our quads and hamstrings and hip flexors and glutes, even core muscles and stabilizers. Like, all these things happen, which is really, really cool and amazing. Oh, not to mention the anterior tibialis and some other stabilizers, soleus and the lower leg. So all these amazing, interesting things happen just when you take a step forward or backward. So you could take a step backward too. But just when you take a step forward, one thing that, if you are really up for it, it's so interesting. Try doing a walking meditation. You could just spend a few minutes. It just really doesn't have to take long. But just go as slowly as you can. And it's fascinating to just feel. Maybe it's fascinating to me because I geek out on this and I know all the names of things and all that stuff. But you don't need to know all the names of things. Just feel what happens. And how much, if you go slower, you have to stabilize more. It requires more awareness and balance. There's a lot happens in just a single step. So give that a try if you're up for it. You could do like 5 minutes walking meditation. Just, keep your gaze downward and just go as slowly as possible and see what it's like to just walk as slowly as possible. For any of you like me who tend to rush around, or I have a lot in my history, tend to move really quickly and rush around and do a lot of things, spend 5 minutes, do a walking meditation where you're just sensing and feeling each of those subtle movements that happen when you take just these steps forward. You just do it inside or on a trail. You slow down for a second, whatever you want to do. Just take 5 minutes and just hold your gaze downward and breathe really naturally and slowly. And just feel all the little subtle, you could do it right here listening to me too, all the subtle things that happen just when you step. There's a lot that goes on. And I would argue, if we take this, how I like to take the physical body as a metaphor for life and other situations, that the physical kind of step has so many little nuances and things going on, right? Like, there's a lot that happens in every single step. So a lot happens in every step that you take in your life every day, whether it's towards something specific or whether it's just in the day, being present, working on, a great step to take is working on being present as often as possible, because when we do that, we're really living, we're really in the experience of life. But we can take that to other endeavors, right? Whether it's meditation or running or yoga or strength training or eating better or learning something new, learning instrument. Oh, maybe I'll bring that up next week. I busted out my old high school instrument recently. Whatever it is, I will mention that because it's just fascinating for me to think. I played the flute in high school from 6th grade through high school, and I just busted it out recently. It's been a while. I don't pick it up very often, but I been really into some fun Disney songs lately, and found some sheet music, and that's another thing. You just practice and it starts to become easier, but so much goes into the knowledge, our brain's ability to remember and have muscle memory for something as simple as walking, for something as simple as playing middle C on any instrument, whether it's the piano or the flute or whatever else, any of those things. It's like a step, right? And there's a lot that goes into it. Your knowledge, your memory, your motor function, and your decisions, right? What is it you want to move toward, whether physically or otherwise in your life? And what step can you take right now in this moment to move in that direction? It might not be a movement, right? Because just like in the act of stepping and walking, stepping in a gait cycle, we wouldn't want to just jump off and fly all the time. We also have to be grounded. So it might not be a movement, it might be a stance phase. It might be a lack of movement. It might be this leg that you stand on in order to move the other one, right? So we need all of that at different times, at different points in our lives. And anyway, I just think it's really cool that every step you take in your life is important, and not to be overwhelmed by, like, we take a lot of steps and make a lot of decisions on a, gosh, daily, hourly basis. But how amazing is that? That all those little decisions, all those little steps add up to be potentially the biggest leaps in your life. You just can't see that it's a leap because it takes them adding up over time for you to recognize that it's a leap, right? It takes some time. Depends on the amount of time for the endeavor and the amount, but just look back at the leaps and strides you've already taken. Look back at and see the leaps and strides you've taken this year alone. You know, collectively, this has been quite the year. I'm sure, without a doubt, that each and every one of you watching right now have taken incredible leaps and strides. You know, everyone's had their own challenges. It's not been the same for everyone, but you may have discovered something and, you know, dealt with new challenges like never before. And so look back upon the strides you've taken. Maybe it was sticking with something. Maybe it was being okay with the absence of things that you're used to. And your ability to handle that or withstand that or reach out for help or help others, whatever that looks like. Because when you look back and see the strides you've taken, right? The strides, the leaps, the big steps that have been the culmination of those small accumulated steps over time, that's where this perceptibility can be seen. But we want to recognize what happened along the way. Because those steps, those changes are only imperceptible because you're living in it in the moment all the time. And that change when you're living it is so hard to see until you look back and see how different it is. And it might even, like I said earlier today, be really hard, or maybe, I was going to say impossible, maybe not impossible to see, because you are now different. Because along the way you did change and you are different. And you have grown. Or sometimes we go the other direction, right? We're not paying attention, or if we're, you know, having a hard go of it. But I'd argue that there's a lot of growth there too. In those hard moments, it's like the pressure on the coal or the carbon creates a diamond, right? So we don't want to necessarily have pressure on ourselves all the time, but we do want to unlayer the layers of mental constructs that and perceptions and beliefs, or even the layers of not being able to see the strides we are already taking. And so you might find that you are flying already. You just can't tell that you're flying because you've worked up to it without realizing it. So my invitation for you for this week is to simply notice and acknowledge those steps that you are taking, that you have taken, that you are taking this month or this week or today, and that you have in the past months, especially when it's really, you know, counted. And keep asking yourself, what step can I take in this moment? In this very moment, every moment. You know, one little step toward lightness, maybe peace of mind, improved health, improved relationships, improved relationship with yourself to start with. There's lots of possibility there. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let's talk about steps. And I want you to really know how important each and every step you're taking is, and where that might lead, you may not know. But each step you take every day, every moment is valuable. So keep on taking them. I'm Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy in Boulder, Colorado. Thank you so much for joining me this Monday night for another episode of SuperSoul Boulder. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you next Monday. Thank you so much. Please comment and let me know your thoughts and what struck you and what you're working with. I'd love to hear it all. Take care. Good night.